personally, I mean, before all this, I was a very self-sufficient person, which I have kind of looked back on it at being like, maybe I was a little too prideful
Yeah.
in my own abilities, not really realizing it until you're in a position where you have no abilities. When you get pushed around in a wheelchair because you can't walk.
Mental health champions, welcome back to a mental health break. My name is Vincent A. Lancey, and I'm excited for today to bring the story of resilience forward to you. After I finished writing TBI Recovery, I wanted to network with more TBI survivors, hopped online into some Facebook groups, and that's what led me to someone today who I'll let share his story. But coincidentally, the small world, he also found himself at Tampa General Hospital. I was blown away. Cameron, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Where are you streaming in from today?
I am in Kansas, so
Kansas to Florida. Beautiful thing about virtual recordings.
a bit chilly here still, though. I hear you guys have better weather.
And the winter is my favorite season in Florida because it's not too hot and we're not in hurricane season. But with that, everyone, I'm excited to bring Cameron on and welcome you back to another episode here on a mental health break. Please remember to subscribe to stay current and please share this episode with someone who would find value in it today. We're brought to you today by Living Proof TBI Recovery Coaching. And I'm super amped up for this because we had a fun chat, a discovery call to get to know each other. And then I was like, you know what? Let me bring you on the show. And it all changed on a vacation. But before we get there, please introduce yourself, Cameron, and then from wherever you feel comfortable, your mental health story.
Sure. It's been a crazy wild ride. It's been about 3 years out now. May 19th of will be 3 years. It has been a very learning process, and ironically, that makes it more difficult when you have a brain injury. It just kind of compounds on top of everything. And I've told a couple guys that I've met through this process because we all find each other. It's just like you're out in the wild, you suddenly run into someone and they start asking questions. We seem to recognize each other. I don't know what it is, but and it's like, oh man, yeah, you too. Like, who would have known? We just find each other, and it seems to be this funny thing of when you've been in it for a little while, you start to recognize just small cues. You're like, wait a second. We actually moved into this house fairly recently, and I saw my neighbor, and she was in a wheelchair. And so I was like, well, I'm not afraid anymore. At this point, I was paralyzed for a while. I was in a chair. I don't mind talking with people. Before, you kind of always have this tension of, do I approach someone? Do you really want to ask? Like, you generally don't. Now I have no fear. I've been there. I know what it's like. So I went over and was chatting with her, and she had this stutter. And I was like, telltale sign. I was like, "Did you have a TBI?" And she at first was like, "No, I was in a car wreck. This is how I got here, or whatever." And I was like, oh, "Okay, I'm sorry to hear that." Kind of chit chatted and stuff. And then after a while, she was like, "Well, lately doctors noticed that on my scans, they might have missed that I actually had more injury than was there." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm real sorry, but I kind of picked up on that before they did, apparently." And she's like, "This was really recent." So again, we just pick up on things because we've been around it. It is what it is. I've had a lot of therapy and a lot of training to be back to a normal person for the most part. Like again, when we moved into this house fairly recently, and I was talking with the neighbor across the street, was kind of explaining, "Hey, I'm not driving right now. You know what's going on?" He was like, "Really?" He's like, "I never would have guessed any of this." And I was like, "Well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate it. I know people mean well or whatnot, but at this point, I feel like a trained monkey being taught how to act and whatnot. Because from the get go and right out of the bed, I mean, being in a hospital for almost 4 months in the ICU, and then once I was out of that, it was therapy for the past couple of years, just learning to walk and talk, to swallow test. That is the stupidest thing. To swallow barium. And it didn't dawn on me until later that it was like, wait, that's on the periodic table of elements in the little section of things you don't want to eat. Like, am I gonna glow at night? Like, it was just a weird high school came back to me all of a sudden. My chemistry teacher that drilled into me was like, wait a second, am I gonna be glowing at night? And they were like, no, no, it's perfectly fine. I was like, okay, sure, whatever you say, but I still feel radioactive. I told my wife, apparently, she was like, you were freaking out. Like, and I was like, well, yeah, I didn't want you to catch whatever I just drank. And she's like, they were like, no, it's fine. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm still skeptical, but apparently that's part of the brain injury too. I found that out later of, yeah, it might be a thing where you're a bit more cautious and a bit more skeptical of everybody else. And I will say, my wife and I, we've talked about this. Has been a struggle in our marriage with everything too. Is we ran into a point where, I mean, I truly felt like everybody was gaslighting me because it felt like I was experiencing reality in one way and everybody else was telling me something totally different. And I was like, I know they're not doing it on purpose because I trust these people and I have to trust these people because they're not broken minded. And so I have to trust them in so many ways. But at the same time, it felt like I experienced the conversation totally different than what everyone else around me was telling me I just said. I was like, man, I don't feel like I said that, but I have to trust the people. And it's a hard thing to do to get out of your own head. No pun intended. I left some of my brain in your area. Tampa General had some of mine in the fridge there. It was definitely in a jar there for a little bit, but it's been a wild journey. You know, honestly, when it all happened, I was in my ICU. I was in the hospital. My wife took me in, and when the doctors came back out, once they analyzed what was going on, trying to figure it out, found out bacterial meningitis was attacking my brain. They came out to my wife. And my parents were there. My in-laws were there. It was a crazy, weird set of events. We all went on a big family trip. And when they came out and they told her, they said, "Look, the bacteria, it was staph infection in my head. They don't know how it got there still." And they were like, "Look, this is so aggressive. It's so bad. It's attacking. It's already killed off part of his brain where the right temporal lobe was primarily affected with this." And they said, "Look, it's already killed off some of this. We don't know what his condition is going to be if he wakes up." They said, "We don't know what he lost. They don't know any of this stuff." It found this huge journey. These people spend their whole lives studying the brain, and just how little they actually know about it is insane. It's like, man, your job relies on this thing. And they were like, "Yeah, we don't know. Sorry." I mean, but that's the reality of it. It's not that they're not educated. It's the reality of how complicated the brain is. The doctors came out and told me to talk to my wife, and they said, "Look, we don't know what he lost. We can either go in and do an emergency lobectomy, which is not the thing everybody thinks of when they take out the frontal lobes. It's the temporal lobe, which luckily for me is actually fairly common. They do that for people with epilepsy. And so apparently they've had practice. So I'm not the test dummy for that part, which was nice, but probably why I'm still here. And so they came in and they took out most of my right temporal lobe, removed the dead tissue, which left me with a brain bleed, which then led to strokes. And again, they couldn't tell me how many because I wasn't hooked up the whole time for it, just due to blood landing on the brain. So hematomic strokes, all words that I never knew before all this. And so they came out and they told my wife, they said, "Look, we can go in and do emergency surgery and we can try to do our best to take out this brain tissue. And he may be in a home for the rest of his life. He may be able to breathe. He may not be able to." They said our best bet, what they assumed, but their biggest comeback was he's probably not going to be able to speak or understand speech, which obviously is a thing. You can tell. I blew that out of the water, which was great. Actually, when I first woke up, the first thing I did was the "I love you" in sign language. My wife has a sign language degree, and we spent a few years before we got married doing sign at a church. We were helping out a church with helping some youth there and doing some signs. So I know a little bit, but I'm not very fluent. But apparently, that was the first thing I did. I was on drip fentanyl. I remember very, very little of my hospital stay in Tampa. But they came out and they told her, "Look, if we do this emergency surgery, it's that you have to elect to do this." And they said if he survives and if he comes out, he probably won't be able to speak or understand speech. He may be on a ventilator for the rest of his life. We just don't know what the complications are for this. And she was like, "Look, we'll let God do another miracle," because they already said I shouldn't have been alive at this point. And she said, "Well, let God take another chance and we'll give it a go." And she opted for it. And my mom was coaching her. Apparently, I get told this later of like, "Look, if he doesn't make it, you're a pretty young lady. You still got a lot of life. You can find another guy." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, mom." Now I find this out later. Sorry, I got a dog that wants my attention. Um,
It's all right. I used to, recovering perfectionist entrepreneur, try to cut and screw the episodes with a dog or a knock, but it's part of life. How old's your dog?
he's probably 12 years old now. We're getting
Yeah,
end of life, unfortunately. He's doing pretty well. He still gets spunky, so I'm hoping he keeps it up. But he's about as old as our marriage is. So my wife and I have been married for about 12 years. He was our first baby.
yeah.
And so I have a hard time. I'm like, "Oh, I don't want him to
Uh,
go," but it is getting time. He's losing a lot of his teeth, and he's having a harder time now. But he's doing pretty well. We're hoping that he sticks around.
Thank you for sharing that. Everyone, if you're tuning in, have a dog, let us know. We would love to see a picture of you and your dog. But Cameron, you've been talking on so many great points, and I resonate with the invisible disease you talked about, right? Where neighbor said, "Oh, I never would have known." But I think that's a testament to also your hard work, Cameron, and your resilience to fighting back and continuing to reback, as we call it, a normal life, right? Rebuilding in our 2.0. And then also, when you said the doctors, they didn't have the timetables, I relate to that because with the brain, it's unique from every other brain in the world where some things are day to day, some are week to week, some are month to month. And like my memory, years to years, where I didn't have that big change for 6 years, you were on the family vacation, right? And that's what brought you to this. You had to do some transporting to get to TGH. What's a piece of advice here, Cameron, you can offer someone who maybe is new to TBI, whether the advice is for them or their family, something you think they should know that we didn't know?
Yeah, that's true. Well, there comes a certain point that you have to trust the doctors and the people around you. They have your best interests at heart, and they've been through this, so they kind of know what they're expecting. Vaguely recall, obviously, you had care at Tampa General, and they were just fabulous. I'm actually still friends with one of my nurses on Facebook today.
That's amazing.
It's our primary nurse, Nurse Joe. If you're out there listening, because it wouldn't surprise me if some of these people listen to the podcast. I know when I left the hospital, they all cheered me on and whatnot. It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I vaguely recall it because I was on drip fentanyl that whole time, and
yeah,
it was quite a crazy case. But yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you kind of have to trust the people around you. I kept a very lighthearted spirit, which they told me when I woke up that this is fairly rare. That people tend to get a bit more angry and upset. They liked having me, which was kind of fun
yeah,
for someone who's an extrovert. I was like, well, okay. I mean, sure, I'll be the person that's entertainment. And I, like you, I was reading some of your stuff, your diary of all the crazy things you said. Is apparently we just say crazy things, and I don't really have very many examples, honestly, on hand. I tried to get my wife saying I had to take notes.
yeah,
Same thing is, I know I remember some of it, but a lot of this stuff is stuff I was told. So it's really hard to remember because there's things I quote unquote remember, but I'm trying to recall if I was told these details or if I remember the details when I was almost in a coma. It gets fuzzy, and I had some really strange dreams, some really strange weirdness. I had ICU delirium. That is not a fun thing. I swear I got out of my hospital bed and walked around to all the other gurneys in my hospital room, which apparently they weren't there, but I vaguely recall them being there. I was in a room, ICU room, with a ton of other people. That's what I remember.
yeah.
And I remember getting out of my bed. I was cuffed to the bed. Later, I asked my wife why I was cuffed to the bed, and she said, "Well, you kept pulling out your tubes." I had the up the nose and the feeding tubes, and I kept pulling them out because I was uncomfortable, apparently. So they cuffed me to the bed, and I couldn't move. And I remember that part, but I couldn't remember why. And then later, I was like, "Oh, it was because I got out of bed and I got into all these other beds that other people were in. They cuffed me to the bed, right?" And she's like, "No, that never happened." And I swear it did, and I did try to walk when I got out, but I had a stroke with the left side paralysis, and so everyone else was adamant, "You can't walk." I said, "No, I got out of bed and I walked to all these other things I can walk." Found out really fast the hard way, I could not walk. I got out of bed and crumpled to the floor, and I was the code gray that, they call over that thing the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like, "Ah, man, that was a rude wake-up call." But I have to learn the hard way, always have. Um
Separating dreams from reality is something I also can relate with, where I could swear certain things happen. And I know I sent you the book, so you know some of the
Mhm.
hallucinations I had where I really believed and would swear on the Bible that these things happen. But with the brain injury, it's a scary thing. And I also had the broken leg, which was nothing compared to relearning how to walk and talk and do all of these things and spell. You gave us great advice for TBI. Now, if there's anyone else listening on here who is just going through a tough time right now, they don't see the other way out like you, right? On a family vacation, all of the doubts are against you, and you still wanted to find a way out, right? People are doubting you, doctors, the expectations, right? Other people, what they expect. You found a way to see it through. What's some advice you can give to someone who may also be in a different situation, but they feel the same way?
See, that's a hard one looking for someone with this broken brain that for advice. It's always difficult to be like, is my advice even valid? Because my brain has just been scrambled in so many ways. It's hard to trust myself. Been in a weird position because actually a good friend of mine, he was in an accident at work and got a concussion. Now, I've been trying to tell him, I was like, "I think it's worse than you think it is that they've diagnosed it as a concussion through workers' comp." So I definitely, from what I've seen, yes, exactly. From what I've seen, I mean, he's now got a really bad stutter. He can't concentrate. He gets migraines and whatnot. I'm like, I've been through this, bro. Like, I think it's a little worse than they diagnosed or told you that it is. And so I've been trying to tell him different things. You got to keep it up and do better. And he's always had that can-do attitude and trying to work through it. And I'm like, you need rest. The thing your brain needs is, and that was a hard thing for me to get used to too through therapy, is all of my therapists were like, you need to take time to truly resonate with your story, obviously as well. You need that time. Is sleep can be therapy, especially in this moment when your brain is recovering. That sleep is essential. You need to get the true sleep and rest. And that is a hard thing to do when your brain is broken, not just because you want to keep going, but just your brain itself almost doesn't let you sleep. You've got pains and aches, and your brain just is scrambled. And suddenly, all these ideas pop in your head of what you need to do and different things that need to hop in. And because your brain's rewiring, it doesn't want to sleep. I mean, it needs sleep and it needs that rest. And you get tired and exhausted. You have to take that time to go, you know what? I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I need to just sleep, even if that's inconvenient for others around me. Is you just need to be take that space and take the time. And I found that while it was difficult and I didn't usually get good quality sleep for a lot of that, you wake up and you're like, why did I even go to sleep? And I was doing worse than I did. And it's like, then it obviously doesn't give you incentive to go back to sleep again. You're like, I don't want to do this next time. But I found that you just got to push through, continue getting that rest, take the time. Read a lot of your stuff too, and you were talking about working out, taking that walk. And sometimes if your brain just can't sleep, take a walk. Honestly, I think you can say that a lot easier than I can because you have Florida weather and I have Kansas weather. Kansas weather, you wait 10 seconds, we could have snowstorm, and we're expecting snow, like a foot of snow that's come this Sunday with tornadoes and all sorts of stuff. So it's like we don't know when it's going to happen. And so I was reading your advice and I was chuckling because I was like, he lives in Florida. That's got to be nice. Those California people and those Florida people, they're like, oh, it's nice out until it rains or, something comes in. It's great. You can go take a walk. It's like, yeah, well, it's -15 outside, sir. Like, yeah, take a walk. What great advice that is for the Midwest here. And we don't even get it worse. I was reading, just saw a post on Montana right now. They're getting like gusts of like 100 some odd miles an hour turning over semi trucks on the
Oh
highway.
my goodness.
I was like, "What? Like, this is a thing?" Luckily, we don't get that here, but that's a thing there. And they were like, "Yeah, it's just, normal Montana things." I'm like, "That's not normal, people, but you guys have been that's Stockholm syndrome for people who live in Montana. That's what that is."
Oh my goodness.
Um,
Well,
but,
I'm
luckily
sorry to let you down with the outdoor, but I'm going to challenge you to do some indoor walking in the house. Set a timer and just get up and down those stairs, do all those things. Everyone, he was an absolutely phenomenal guest. He talked on the highlights of having a community, right? How he started to find people and sharing those stories like this podcast. One of the many goals of it is to share our shared stories because you never know which part of someone's story will help you get through. I mean, the day to day thing we spoke about, the invisible disease, these are all things as a TBI patient we have to learn to rebuild. And he's a great example of hard work and payoff. And sometimes things happen we don't want them to. The ups and downs is life, and we have to find a way to do it. And he's got a great family. We just met his son here walking around on the, hey, bud. We met him on the podcast today.
Mhm.
So, everyone, please remember to subscribe to stay current. And Cameron, where can we say hello to you if someone wants to connect with you?
Oh, you can find me on Facebook, Cameron Leckliter. My last name is a pain in the rear end to spell, Leckliter. But yeah, no, feel free. Like, I'm an extrovert, and we have found, especially through all this, we find each other. And it's not a bad thing to reach out for other people. Sometimes having someone else speak in your life and just their perspective can really, change something and give you a little bit of glimpse of stuff. Personally, I mean, before all this, I was a very self-sufficient person, which I have kind of looked back on it at being like, maybe I was a little too prideful
Yeah,
in my own abilities, not really realizing it until you're in a position where you have no abilities. When you get pushed around in a wheelchair because you can't walk, it really humbles you and you really realize how much you take for granted or how much you thought you relied on your own abilities.
absolutely
And,
true.
it's definitely been a change of pace and realizing, I can borrow things from my neighbors and not feel like I'm the burden on my neighbors. They want to let you borrow stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was fully able, I wanted to be let people to borrow my skills and my abilities and my tools. Now I'm in the opposite position where I'm forced to be able to do that, and it always kinda like, it started with "I'm not so sure I can, like, ask for a rake from my neighbor," like, I should be able to get my own rake, but at the same time, I was like, "You know what?" When you realize that when you were on the flip side and you wanted to help out somebody, regardless of what condition they're in, whether they're brain broken or, fully capable, you wanted to be able to help people regardless. And now that you're on the flip side, it's like, you know what? Sometimes it's kind of encouraging to them to let them help you.
Yeah.
And so even though I'm in the position where I have to take the help, it's still kind of a benefit to others around us. I found that with the nurses too, is that obviously they're in it because they want to help people, and so you kinda have to go under their tutelage and let them, give you the advice that's going to help you the most because they know best in a lot of these instances. Well, they know the best that they know.
And the way you started the show is amazing. You're ending on a note where everyone, it is a sign of strength to ask for help. It is not a sign of weakness. My name is Vincent A. Lancy. We've got Cameron here today. Thank you for joining us, and everyone, thank you for tuning in to keep this show a top 5% global show. It helps us make a difference all around the world. And Cameron, can't thank you enough. Glad we connected, everyone. Cold networking does work sometimes. We made it happen here today. Cameron,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
definitely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode. I would love to hear your feedback. What did you love? What do you want to see more of? Are there any questions you would like me to ask the guests who come on the show? This show is not possible without you, the amazing listeners, so please email us at podcastsbylancy@gmail.com and let us know what you think. We'll also feature you on a later show. Please remember to subscribe to stay current with our amazing community of guests who will continue to come on the show, sprinkled in with solo episodes from me, Vincent A. Lancy. With that, I look forward to introducing more shows to you each and every week. And with that, we're signing off today. Enjoy the episodes and make it a great day ahead.